Welcome to Notebook Nuggets.
Hey there.
Today we're diving deep into some really fundamental ideas about marketing, the kind that sort of explain why some brands just stick.
Yeah, why they dominate their fields.
Exactly. We've looked at some pretty influential thinking on this. The aim is really to give everyone a clear, actionable grasp of what makes marketing work.
Whether you're starting something new or just trying to figure out the market.
Or even just curious about why we buy the things we do.
Yeah.
So our goal today is to unpack these core principles, show them with examples you'll definitely recognize, and help everyone see how they actually operate out there.
Right. And these aren't just, quick fads we're talking about. These feel more like underlying forces. You see them again and again.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, one of the most powerful ideas is just the advantage of being first, the law of leadership.
Oh, okay. Being first. So the idea is the first brand to really plant its flag in a category. It often just stays there.
Pretty much. It often leads to long-term dominance. Think about it, who comes to mind first for certain things.
Okay. Renting a car? Maybe Hertz?
Often Hertz, yeah. Cola? Coke. Definitely Coke.
And even something like, say, top universities in the U.S.
Harvard usually pops up first, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a real power in that initial foothold.
It's like getting in early sets you up.
And what's really interesting is how that initial lead just sort of sustains itself. People tend to go with what they know, what seems like the original.
Creates a mental shortcut.
Totally.
But it's not just about literally being the first product out the door, is it? I remember reading that being first in the mind is maybe even more critical.
Yes, that's a huge distinction.
Okay.
The law of the mind. Think about Apple.
Okay, personal computers.
Right. They weren't technically the very first company with a personal computer. There was MIT's, the Altair.
Right, I vaguely remember that.
But Apple, through their design, their marketing, they captured the idea of the personal computer in the public's mind in a way those earlier ones didn't. So they won the mental race, even if not the absolute first step.
That's a great way to put it. While being first to market helps, it's owning that mental space, that perception, that really defines leadership.
And the mental ownership, it can get so strong that the brand name just becomes the word for the thing itself.
Oh, yeah.
Like we say Kleenex for tissues.
Or Band-Aid for any adhesive bandage.
Chapstick for lip balm. Doesn't matter who made it.
Exactly. That's like the ultimate proof. You're first in the mind. Your brand is the category for most people.
Okay, so being first is huge. But what if you're not? What if someone else got there already?
Ah, good question. That brings us to the law of category. If you can't be first in an existing category,
make a new one.
You got it. Find or create a new category where you can be the pioneer.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about Amelia Earhart.
Okay, famous pilot.
Right. She wasn't the very first person to fly solo across the Atlantic.
No, Lindbergh did that.
Correct. But she became world famous as the first woman to do it. She created a new category.
Ah, I see. Same achievement, different category. Clever.
And you see this in business all the time. Charles Schwab.
Brokerage firm.
Yeah. They didn't try to be another Merrill Lynch, another full-service broker. That space was crowded.
So what did they do?
They basically created the discount brokerage category. They were first in that new space and became the leader there.
So it's about finding a niche, a different angle where you can be number one.
Exactly. Define a new playground.
Okay, so let's say you're in a market. Maybe you created it, maybe not. What's the next big idea? Is it just about having the best product?
Well, that's what you'd think, wouldn't you? But not necessarily. This leads to the law of perception.
Perception, meaning what people think is true.
Precisely. Marketing isn't fundamentally a battle of products, it's argued. It's a battle of perceptions. People act based on what they believe.
Even if it's not objectively the best.
Even then, the example often used is Japanese cars. In the US, brands like Honda, Toyota, huge success.
Yeah, massive.
But back in Japan, Honda, for instance, didn't have that same dominance in the car market initially.
Why not? Weren't the cars good?
The cars were fine, but the perception in Japan was that Honda was primarily a motorcycle company.
Ah, so that image kind of bled over and maybe limited how people saw their cars?
That's the idea. It shows how strong initial perceptions are and how they affect buying choices, regardless of the actual product specs sometimes.
Wow. So it's about the story, the image.
Very much so. Which leads nicely into the law of focus.
Focus. Like concentrating?
Kind of. It's the power of owning one single word or maybe a very short concept in the prospect's mind.
Owning a word. How does that work?
Think about FedEx. What word comes to mind?
Overnight.
Exactly.
Xerox.
Copier or copy.
Volvo.
Safety.
Driving.
performance.
Right. They've managed to link their brand very strongly to that single concept.
Yeah.
That's the law of focus. It's incredibly powerful.
Because when you need that specific thing, their name just pops into your head.
Instantly. It cuts through the clutter.
But wait, can two companies own the same word? Like, could another car company just decide to be the safety car?
Well, that's where the law of exclusivity comes in. The argument is, no, not really.
Why not?
Because once a company like Volvo truly owns safety in the collective mind, it's incredibly hard for another brand to muscle in on that exact same word.
It just confuses people. Or reinforces Volvo.
Probably both. You need to find your own word, your own unclaimed territory in the mind.
Okay, that makes sense. So you figure out your word, or your category.
What then? Does your strategy change depending on where you sit in the market?
Absolutely. That's the law of the ladder. Your marketing depends on which rung of the ladder you occupy in the customer's mind. Are you the leader? Number 2. Number 3.
So number 2 shouldn't act like number 1.
Exactly. The classic example is Avis, the car rental company.
Right. Hertz was number 1.
Hertz was number 1, so what did Avis do? They couldn't claim to be the biggest?
They said, we try harder.
Bingo. They acknowledged their number 2 position and turned it into a benefit. We're not the biggest, so we have to try harder for your business. Brilliant.
It leveraged their spot on the ladder.
Perfectly. And speaking of ladders, there's this tendency over the long term, the law of duality.
Duality, meaning two.
Yeah. In many mature markets, it eventually boils down to a two-horse race. Two main competitors dominate.
Like Coke and Pepsi.
The absolute classic example. For decades, it's been Coke versus Pepsi. What happened to other colas, like Royal Crown?
RC Cola. Yeah, you don't see it as much. They kind of faded in comparison.
Exactly. It often shakes out to just two major players capturing most of the market share.
Okay, so if you're aiming for that number 2 spot, knowing it's often a two-horse race, how do you position yourself against the leader?
Good question. That's where the law of the opposite comes into play.
Be the opposite of the leader.
Essentially, yes. If you want to be a strong number 2, differentiate yourself by highlighting an attribute or benefit that's the opposite of the leader's strength, or maybe addresses a perceived weakness of the leader.
Okay.
Think about mouthwash. Listerine was the established leader, right? Strong medicinal taste. Effective, but...
Yeah. The taste wasn't great.
So Scope came along and positioned itself as the good-tasting mouthwash, the opposite of Listerine's medicine breath.
They didn't try to be a better Listerine. They offered a different benefit taste.
Exactly. They carved out their space by being the opposite on a key attribute.
Makes sense. Now, these categories, do they stay the same forever?
Rarely. Markets evolve.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the law of division.
Division. It's split apart.
Yeah. Over time, a broad category tends to divide into 2 or more narrower categories. Think about computers again.
Okay. Started with big mainframes.
Then personal computers emerged as a distinct category. Then laptops split off from desktops.
Then tablets came along. Smartphones.
Exactly. Each division creates new subcategories. Mainframe, mini-computer, workstation, PC, laptop, tablet, smartphone.
And each new subcategory is a chance for a new leader to emerge.
Precisely. It's a continuous process. Recognizing these divisions early is key.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What about time? Does marketing work instantly?
Not usually. That's the law of perspective. Marketing effects often take time to manifest, and you need a long-term view.
Meaning what works short-term might hurt long-term.
Absolutely. Think about constant sales and deep discounts.
Yeah, drive sales now, right?
It might bump sales figures today, sure. But long-term, it can train customers to only buy on sale. It devalues the brand.
So you're trading long-term brand health for a quick hit.
That's the danger. You need to consider the downstream consequences.
Okay. And related to that, maybe, is the pressure to always grow, right?
Yeah.
To add more products under a successful brand name.
Yes, and that leads us to the potential pitfall described by the law of line extension.
Extending the line. Like a brand known for one thing starts making lots of other different things.
Exactly. Taking a successful brand name and slapping it onto new products, sometimes in totally different categories.
Seems logical, doesn't it? Leverage the name recognition.
It does seem logical, and it can provide short-term gains. But the argument is that, over the long run, it often dilutes the core brand's power and focus in the consumer's mind.
Can you give an example?
Well, the book mentions things like maybe a famous gin brand launching a vodka, or a well-known ketchup maker suddenly offering baby food.
Yeah, it feels a bit off, maybe. Less focused.
It can weaken what the original brand stands for. The power often comes from focus, which ties into the law of sacrifice.
Sacrifice. What do you have to give up?
To gain something significant, you often have to sacrifice something else. This could mean sacrificing a broad product line to focus on a core strength.
Like specializing.
Yes. The example given compares Smucker's, which really focuses on jams, jellies, preserves,
Right.
versus Kraft, which has a much, much wider portfolio across many food categories. Smucker's sacrificed breadth for depth and dominance in its niche.
So giving up options to be stronger in one area could also mean sacrificing target markets or resisting trends.
All of those. It's about strategic focus, which often requires letting go of possibilities.
Interesting. Now back to attributes, like safety for Volvo. What if another company wants to compete? They can't use safety.
Right. But the law of attributes suggests that for every attribute a leader owns, there's often an opposite attribute that can be just as effective for a competitor.
Opposite,
Yeah.
like we saw with Scope and Listerine.
Exactly. Or think about Coke versus Pepsi again. Coke's position was often built around being the original, the classic.
Okay, yeah, established.
So Pepsi, for years, positioned itself as the choice of the new generation, the opposite of old and established, young, modern.
So they leveraged the opposite attribute.
Clever. It allows you to appeal to a different segment without directly challenging the leader on their home turf.
Okay, sometimes though, brands have negatives, right? Things they maybe wish weren't true.
Sure. And surprisingly, acknowledging that can be powerful. That's the law of candor.
Candor. Like honesty, admitting a flaw.
Exactly. Sometimes admitting a negative can actually build credibility and, paradoxically, reinforce a strength.
How does that work?
Listerine again. Their famous tagline, "The taste you hate twice a day."
Yeah, I remember that. Brutally honest.
But what did it imply?
Well, if it tastes that bad, it must be strong. It must work really well.
Precisely. The candor about the bad taste reinforced the perception of effectiveness. It's counterintuitive, but can be very smart.
Okay. So many laws. When you're trying to make a big move, how do you focus your efforts?
That relates to the law of singularity. The idea here is that in most situations, there's usually only one single move, one key action that will produce substantial results.
Just one, not trying lots of things.
It suggests focusing your resources on that single, most impactful point of leverage, rather than scattering your efforts. It's like the 80-20 rule, maybe.
Yeah, the Pareto principle. Find the one thing that really moves the needle.
Exactly. Concentrate your force there.
But can you always know what that one thing is? Or what's going to happen next?
Well, that's the rub. The law of unpredictability states that you can't really predict the future, especially competitor reactions.
So detailed long-range plans might be flawed.
They might be too rigid. While you need a direction, a strategy, you also need flexibility. You can't perfectly map out the competitive battlefield years in advance.
So focus more on a general direction and be ready to adapt.
That seems to be the advice. Navigate the uncertainty rather than assuming you can control everything.
Okay. Now, what happens when a company gets really successful? Number one, they're dominant. Are there dangers there?
Oh, definitely. That's the law of success. Success can breed arrogance.
And arrogance leads to?
Failure, often. When a company becomes successful, it can sometimes lose touch with the market, stop listening to customers, and become complacent. They start believing their own hype.
They think they're invincible.
And that's when they make mistakes, like maybe ill-advised line extensions or ignoring a disruptive new competitor. Staying humble and customer-focused is vital, even at the top.
Success can be its own trap.
It really can.
And inevitably, even the best companies mess up sometimes, right?
Yeah.
They launch a dud product, make a wrong turn.
Absolutely. Failure happens. And the law of failure stresses that it's crucial to acknowledge mistakes, learn from them, and adjust. Don't just double down on something that isn't working.
Like admit it didn't work and change course.
Yeah. The book mentions Sam Walton's approach at Walmart, kind of a ready, fire, aim philosophy. Try things, see what works, fix the mistakes quickly. Don't be paralyzed by fear of failure.
Learn from the setbacks.
Essential for long-term survival.
What about situations where there's just tons of buzz, massive media attention, everyone's talking about something new?
Be wary. That's the warning from the law of hype.
Hype is bad.
Not always, but often. When something is really hyped up, it's masking underlying problems. If something is truly revolutionary and working, it often speaks for itself. Excessive hype can sometimes be compensatory.
Like they're trying too hard because the substance isn't quite there.
That can be the case. Think about New Coke. Massive hype, massive launch.
And a massive flop.
Exactly. The hype didn't match the reality for consumers.
So look beyond the buzz. Okay, building something sustainable. Is it better to jump on quick trends or look for deeper currents?
Deeper currents, according to the law of acceleration. Successful marketing programs, the ones with lasting impact, are built on trends, not fads.
What's the difference?
Fads are like shooting stars, bright but short-lived. Think pet rocks or maybe certain fashion crazes. Trends are longer-term shifts in the market or consumer behavior, like the move towards health and wellness or increased environmental awareness.
So fads give you a quick burst, but trends offer sustainable growth.
That's the idea. Ride the wave of a trend. Don't just chase fleeting fads.
Okay, last one. Let's say you have a brilliant idea, a great strategy based on all these laws.
Yeah.
Is that enough?
Unfortunately, no. The final law, the law of resources, brings it back to a hard reality.
Money.
Money. Ideas need funding. You need adequate resources to get your idea off the ground, develop it, and get it into the mind of the consumer. Marketing costs money.
Even the best idea in the world won't go anywhere without the fuel to make it happen.
Pretty much. Think about the early days of Apple. Great ideas, but they needed that initial investment to actually build the computers and market them. Resources are essential.
Wow, okay, so that's quite a tour through these marketing laws.
It really covers a lot of ground, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, just to recap, we've seen these core principles from being first to creating categories, the power of perception, owning a word, all the way to needing resources.
And how they play out with real brands we all know.
We really hope this deep dive has given everyone some valuable insights, maybe a few aha moments about why things are the way they are in the marketplace.
Yeah, hopefully it sparks some thinking.
Definitely. We really encourage you, our listeners, to think about these laws as you go about your day. Look at the brands you see, the ads you encounter.
See if you can spot these principles in action. What stands out to you? What examples come to mind from your own experience?
This is really just scratching the surface of understanding these powerful forces.
Absolutely. And maybe it prompts a question for you to consider. Reflecting on all this, what's one law, one idea that really jumps out at you?
Ooh, good question.
And how might you apply that insight, maybe in your own work or just in how you observe the brands you interact with? Connecting it back to your world.
Yeah, make it personal. Great thought. Well, if you found this exploration insightful, please do give it a like.
Then share it with anyone else you think might find it useful.
Definitely. And drop a comment below. Share your examples, your questions, your key takeaway. We genuinely love to hear your thoughts.
Let's keep the conversation going.
And of course, subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. We're always exploring interesting ideas.
Let us know, too. Are there other business principles or maybe laws from other fields you're curious about? We're always looking for ideas.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in to Notebook Nuggets.
See you next time.